If you're shopping for a small and sporty sedan, how about this scenario? Acura Integra A-Spec, Hyundai Elantra N. Now at first, these two cars may not seem like direct competitors, but around 35 grand, fully loaded and with manual transmissions, well, it's game on. Up your car game with CarGurus. Sell it online and in minutes you can get a cash offer from dealers nationwide. They'll pick up your car and they'll pay you. Check it out. 2 compact sedans with front-wheel drive, turbocharged inline 4s, and 6-speed manuals. All the fancy trimmings from larger wheels to the larger screens. Back seats you can actually sit in. They share common interests, but if these two started dating, it would be a rocky start. The Integra is conservative, it's classy, very much put together, not here to show off. It does a little bit because it has a more rakish roofline here thanks to that hatchback. More spacious, more practical. That's really the whole point of the Integra versus other luxury sedans it really competes with, like the Audi A3 or the 2 Series Grand Coupe BMW, the Mercedes A-Class. Those are the cars that this car is primarily geared at. So even though I'm comparing it to that Elantra does have similar space and proportions. But this one overall is a better looking car. It's sleeker, the lines are crisper. What Acura's done with this front end, as they have on all their models, just looks nice and sleek. LED lights, the way the LED running lights really look like a track chicane, that nice big grille. Acura's never used to look good 10 years ago, but now with this big grille, they've nailed the look. Same goes for the rear. Has some nice sweeping taillights. It's all very flowy, it's gentle, it looks good. The Integra has a harmonious design. The Elantra is hormonal. It's just raging at you from all angles, especially right here on the side. These cut lines going every which way right at you. I feel like I've gotten into a car accident, but I haven't because it's just how it looks. It's a trendy looking design, but I don't think it's going to last quite as long as that Acura Integra. That said, it's unmistakably a performance car. From the way it sits on these oversized wheels to that big grille, all the red trim around, the spoiler out back, and just the overall stance. You know this is going to be a fast car, and you haven't even started it yet. The clear winner on space? The Integra. The hatch design gives it 24 cubic feet of space behind the seats. When you fold them down, even more. Definitely the clear winner there. Now 14 cubic feet in the Elantra N is pretty good for a small sedan, but there's crossbar bracings behind those rear seats, so if you fold them down, you can't put large items through that easily. Plus the trunk is really not really well damped, there's no struts. It's got a very dim little incandescent light bulb here, whereas the Integra just feels more professionally and really fully furnished. The first car I would compare the Integra to is not that Elantra N, it's the Civic Si. That's because underneath this is a Civic Si. The engine, the transmission, the chassis, basically this whole interior, save for a few different trim pieces. Now that's okay, because the Civic Si has some very, very good bones in it. This is a 1.5 liter turbo 4 with 200 horsepower and 192 pound-feet of torque. And like every Honda engine, it is smooth, it revs really freely, and you do have to wind it up to get that peak power, but it is satisfying to do it. A little loud, but it actually sounds good. But here's the thing. Next to that Elantra N, you're really wanting for power. See, it probably sounds really good right now, but the forward momentum is just not quite what it is in the Elantra N, or really anything else in the Integra's size class. That includes the Mercedes A-Class, the BMW 2 Series Grand Coupe, the Audi A3. Those are pushing definitely more torque. They've got really good automatic transmissions, and they're almost the same price. But the great thing about this Integra and this top trim is the manual transmission. This is something you can't find anymore, hardly anywhere. Certainly not in this size class and price, not at all. This manual transmission, ooh, it hit the red line. It's great. It's the mechanical connection that Honda really knows how to do. I keep saying Honda because that's what Acura is. Honda engineered this whole car, and it's excellent. This transmission is not a transmission that most automakers would even consider making anymore. And when they put this in the new Civic Si, they put all these improvements in. Watch my review of that car to find out what they all are. When you get an Integra, it's exactly the same thing, and that's fantastic because it just feels so good in your hand. It's short throw, it engages just like that. Perfect throws, perfect detents. The clutch is really easy to modulate. That Elantra N, I've stalled it more than once because it's just hard to grab that engagement point, it really is. But this car, no matter what driving mode you're in, it just always feels right. And even though there's a pretty big power deficit compared to the Elantra N, at least when you're in the right gear and the right curve, it still feels really, really good. The steering feel, I think, is pretty spot on. As far as electric assisted steering racks go, you know, it's hard to make one that always feels as natural as the old cars from 10, 15, 20 years ago. This one feels good. These brakes are just perfect in every way, in the feel, in the pedal travel, everything. There's 3 drive modes in the Integra, plus an individual mode that lets you customize all of them to your liking, but there really isn't that much of a difference. There's adaptive dampers, I can't really feel the difference. Throttle sensitivity, I don't really know. The only thing I really feel is the steering effort, which does tighten up in that top sport setting. So I just leave it in that as the default thing, because whenever I'm driving, I usually just keep things in sport. I always want the max attack setting. This is really a car that's meant to look good and feel good in traffic, on commuting, on long drives. But when you compare it against any other type of sports sedan, it just doesn't really have it. Part of it is the tires. Acura doesn't ship this car with summer tires. That's an option if you order a Honda Civic Si, not this one. The Elantra N, it's got Pilot Sport 4S tires as standard. So right off the bat, the Integra just doesn't have the grip that it could have because this chassis is really good. It's just not quite supported by the rubber. So it's not as sporty of a sedan as it could be, but check out the fuel economy numbers. Look at them. High 30s. That's a big deal. I was getting an indicated 40 mpg on the highway on my way here for this review. So can't really argue with a 1.5 liter turbo because there's not a lot of fuel you can really dump into it. Do I want more power, especially next to that Elantra N, and this thing costs more? Yes. Acura definitely has the headroom with the Integra to offer a Type S. You know it has to happen. They put it on the MDX, which is a 3-row family SUV. And we all know that that big 6-cylinder engine with the turbos is not going to go in a small car like the Integra, but that 2-liter turbo 4 would work perfectly. Really perfectly. So if you're expecting the type of performance like a hot hatch or a hot sedan, and this is not going to be that car, and even though it says Integra, you really have to remember that most Integras that were sold throughout the 80s and 90s were basically just slightly more upscale Honda Civics. That's what this one is. But compared to that Elantra N, well, it's a completely different car. This Elantra N seems pretty civil. It's pretty quiet, it's nice and damped, and ride's actually pretty good. Feels like a rental car, really. There's a button on here, it's bright blue. Let's press it. Okay. Okay, all right. Starting to show me something here. As we proceed here. All right. Yeah, this is quite a different ride than the Integra. Wow. Automatic rev matching. It is so loud from inside the car. And I apologize to anybody outside who's hearing the gunfire coming from that exhaust. It's absolutely ridiculous. It's like an anti-lag system on a rally car. It doesn't get old. It feels childish, but I love childish cars. Wow. Even if you miss shift like I just did right there, car automatically revs perfectly. Now the Integra has that same system, but it's nothing like this. Jesus. Here's where all the sound and fury comes from. It's a 2-liter inline-4, heavily turbocharged. There's a lot of pressure feeding through this engine block. 276 horsepower and 289 pound-feet of torque. It's a peaky motor, it really is. You have to wind this thing up really past 4. There's quite a bit of lag, and now it kicks in, you know, and it doesn't take too long, but there's still that initial hesitation. Not nearly as much torque as it might seem from down low. So you really got to get in the right gear. Once you do, it just bolts. Everything about this car, the chassis is just tuned perfectly. Great steering weighting. Considering how hardcore it is, it doesn't really crash and bump and jar you all over the place. It's just really settled. And then with one button push, or 2, because it's all configurable right here, there's multiple settings on both of these buttons, I can make this car feel just like the Integra. And then with another push, it's very much not the Integra. Now, all that power being sent to the front wheels is normally a really terrible idea, but in this car, it's got a limited slip differential with a lot of driving modes selectable right here. You can change the level of slip. You can change even how much the rev matching is aggressively downshifting on every turn. It's all accessible on this screen, and it's all cribbed from BMW M. Now, there's no coincidence that Hyundai chose the letter N, comes right after M, and even just looking at the dashboard here, seeing how the engine, the steering, and the suspension all have multiple levels of adjustment, and these, of course, N buttons here right on the steering wheel, which are your presets. It's just like BMW. They tested this car on the Nürburgring. Now, years ago, we would have been all like, oh, great job, Hyundai. You know, excellent. You took a car on the Nürburgring. But this Elantra N actually feels completely sorted. They not only did their homework, they put in the time and the effort to build a car that, all in all, just feels like it was born like this. With the Elantra N, you're basically getting 2 cars in one. I get a really fast, very loud, very excitable, very stiff handling sedan, and then when I just push this other button here, everything quiets down. Everything settles. What's better than that? I just like how composed this car is. It really is. It's just so sorted in every capacity. And I just have more fun driving it. Now, the manual transmission, not quite as good as that Integra. It just feels like it's a little more, what's the word here? Yeah, it feels like I'm gonna slam into some gears and make some very expensive grinding noises even when I'm shifting correctly. It doesn't feel like it always engages as well as that Integra. But these are small little things that I don't really care about because overall, right? It's a manual transmission on a car in 2022, and I'm having a lot of fun. A lot of car reviewers, you might look at us as jaded individuals that drive too many fun, fast cars. So when we get in something that we don't like, we criticize it. And yeah, that's kind of true about all of us, myself included. But sometimes you don't have the highest expectations for cars. I thought this would be good. Really did. I thought, okay, yes, with this much power, with all the upgrades to the suspension and tires, it's got to be good. But it turned out to be great. I've been in lots of very fast cars throughout my career. This is one of those cars where it's like there's just all the speed I really need and way more excitement without going into ridiculous velocities. And you still can in this car, and to be honest, the character kind of encourages you to street race. I wouldn't suggest doing that. But this is definitely that type of street racer theme going on here. Fuel economy does suffer. Check out the numbers. Those aren't really good. The dual clutch transmission isn't much better, so that's the price you pay for the performance you get. Yeah, there's such a clear-cut difference here between this Elantra and the Integra. Ordinarily, you'd never compare a Hyundai compact sedan to something in Acura's realm. But these days, you should. And the brakes, they're over 14 inches in the front. Perfect. The Integra has the better interior by a long shot. All the materials are better, the design, the colors, they're more uniform, they're more upscale, better even than some of the Mercedes, BMW, and Audi models that compete directly with this car. You also get more amenities like power seats, you get a moonroof, you get a better surround sound stereo with speakers here on the roof, and you get semi-automated driving assist that the Elantra does not offer on the N model. The quality is superior inside the Integra, especially with this red and black color scheme that you can't get inside the all-black cabin of the Elantra N. The Elantra N has the better seats, but other than the seats, the steering wheel, and the shifter, all the interior materials are worse, and it skimps on some amenities. Compared to the Integra, the Elantra is decidedly low rent. There's a lot of plastics here that are hard, the textures aren't that great. The design is okay, but you definitely don't feel like it's the luxurious experience of that Acura. But the best parts are these screens and the things that you will touch. The shifter, the steering wheel, and these really hip-hugging seats. The first thing you notice about the Integra is that it doesn't use other Acura systems. This is a touchscreen straight out of the Honda Civic, and it's much easier to use than the touchpad. You can watch our other reviews to see how wonky that system can be. Because of the real buttons on the side here and the way things are organized, it's a lot easier than other Acura systems, but it's not quite as good as the Hyundai's, even though this uses the technology package with this larger 9-inch display versus the standard 7-inch. You can still get Apple CarPlay, you got Sirius XM, there's a 16-speaker audio system, and there's a head-up display here that's also really good. It's also relatively easy to adjust settings, but sometimes when you're using the driver assist, some of the settings are over here and some of them are in the instrument panel, so that causes some confusion at times. The digital instrument panel comes standard. You can view a lot of things from all the safety systems to changing the brightness and tire pressure, seeing who's buckled up. It's pretty good. It's straight out of the Civic with a slightly different reskin. You can also view things on the left as well. Those change more of your media. It's got Alexa, Sirius XM, all of that stuff. The gauges don't quite have the same level of detail and information when you go from different driving modes. They just change different colors. So I wish it did provide you with more information like in the Elantra. The Elantra N comes with this screen as standard. It's 10.3 inches. It's not as high as the Integra's, but it's wider, and it definitely is easier to use. It's a little quicker, and it's just, well, it's got this. I can see all the information from the car, change all of the settings. There's 2 different custom modes, but look at this, suspension, steering, limited slip, exhaust sounds. I can change the circuit that I'm on. It'll optimize the car for that particular track. Absolutely love that. But when you're not using N mode, well, if you just want to change vehicle settings, pretty easy. A lot easier than the Acura. For example, all of these things here, just like in what you'll find in BMW and Mercedes models, they have multiple menus here that are illustrating exactly the things that you're changing. It's so much easier to see. You can use digital keys, you can even use your wireless smartphone to unlock and even start the car. I can change the climate so it'll automatically recirculate the air when you use the windshield washer fluid. It's little details like this that make living with an Elantra N pretty easy. The graphics on the Elantra N, they look clearer and crisper than you'll find in the Acura. There's more depth to them. There's also just more information to show at a glance, like the oil temperature. In this car, well, stuff like that matters, because when you go into the N mode, you get all of this crazy information on the suspension and the steering and the engine. Now, over the sound, you may not even pay attention to all this stuff, but this is the mode you always want to be in, and it focuses your attention, unlike the Integra. The 2023 Acura Integra starts at $30,800. There are 3 trims, and only the top trim has the manual. That's the A-Spec with the technology package, and it's $37,395 with destination. Try getting an Audi A3, BMW 2 Series, or a Mercedes A-Class with these features for that price. They're all thousands more, and none of them have the manual. The 2022 Elantra N starts at $32,150. The only options are extra charge paint and an automatic transmission. My car didn't have them. Final price, $33,245 with destination. The Civic Type R is better, and it costs thousands more. A Mini Cooper JCW hits $40. A VW GLI costs the same, but doesn't have the power or the suspension to match. Which car is it going to be? A high-strung little hot rod like the Elantra N, or a more sedate luxury car like the Integra? Well, for me, it's all about the drive, and the Elantra N drives so well that I would pick it despite how it looks. Not really the best looker, because when you look at that car, it's just more refined and sophisticated inside and out. Now, what do you guys think? These cars are very evenly matched. They both have their pluses and minuses, and if you can find one on the lot, you deserve to try both of them, especially with the 6-speed manual transmission. That is a rare thing on any new car in this segment. So check it out. Go to CarGurus.com for listings. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. We'll see you next time.